Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of uh, Bitcoin prediction. And so today's episode here, if you don't know by now, or maybe you do, today is the January 3rd, 2009. The first block, the Genesis block. Today is Genesis Day. So if you can go to blockchain and you can actually see the first block that has come into creation, and what makes this special is that this is the only block that has no previous block. So this block did not come from a previous blockchain or from the previous block. So that's what makes this particular block the Genesis block, and that's what is so special, because it's the only block that did not come from a previous block. And all preceding blocks basically essentially came from this Genesis block. And so that's kind of the importance of it. It's also the day in which Satoshi Nakamoto mined the first block. So I'll talk about that a little bit, but let me go on to talk about something else in my prediction here. So hold on here. Okay. So in this, one of the things I do every day or all the time is I every day go up to YouTube and I do a search for Bitcoin, and then I filter for today, right? I'll just go ahead and do it right now. I'll just go back to this person. Okay, so every day that's what I do. I filter through it. Go on the filter and I go, let's see what somebody has to say today. And I do this every day. I do this every day. And you know, some of the stuff I watch, and some of it I watch and I don't understand. Some of it I watch, you know, constantly. I look forward to seeing other people's content, you know, and you know, I just go through it. And if I see someone new I haven't seen before, I'll take a look at it. You know, that's kind of what I like to do, and I like to hear other people talk about what they, you know, what they think and what's going on. Of course, you see a lot of familiar, you know, videos here and everything. And then I come on this gentleman, and I'm sure he's talked about it before, but you know, it's someone I don't see that often, you know, not the usual characters. Okay, so anyways, this gentleman, it's a 30-minute video. Probably most people don't watch it. It's only got, what, 32 views right now. And this gentleman asks, why are so few blacks involved in Bitcoin? And he's specifically talking about, you know, the community as a whole. How come he doesn't see any blacks that represents his ethnicity or something like that, I guess. I don't know. And especially, you know, when it comes to the Bitcoin conferences, when you see people on probably YouTube or in the news or whatever, you don't see a lot of blacks being represented here. And it's kind of what he gets into it a little bit, talks about it. And I do agree on some of the stuff he says, like, you know, black folks don't trust the finance system, don't trust the banks. They definitely don't trust the police. Black folks don't trust the state. Even in typically there's been a relationship with recent relationship anyway with you know the Democrats and the black community. There's kind of been a relationship there, but even then, in heavy Democratic states like California, black people do not trust the state. They don't even trust their politicians. They don't even trust their local state, the local government. Okay, there's a heavy, heavy, heavy distrust. Um, and there's a reason, because if you look in history, blacks in America have been screwed over so many times. Basically, the minority groups in America have been screwed over many times. Native American Indians, the Chinese in San Francisco area, or Chinese in general, and they immigrated over. So usually the new groups of immigrants have always been, have been the target for, has always been a target. That's just the way it is. And I understand some of the reason why people feel like their jobs are being taken away, and in America it used to be very, very, very white, but it's not that way now. And then there seems to be a cultural, ethnic conflict. But not as bad as some other places, I have to admit. America is still a very, very mixed melting pot here. But I could, from my point of view and my experience, I know why. Well, black folks are involved in Bitcoin. Okay, there's a lot of black folks using Bitcoin right now, and they may not talk about it. See, black folks don't talk about this stuff, right? They don't, like I said, there's a heavy distrust, and there's also, I think, a lot of misunderstanding of Bitcoin. I think, a lot of people think that Bitcoin's anonymous, like completely anonymous, untraceable. Well, that's not necessarily true. There's also a misconception of how Bitcoin works. So I think that's another reason why you don't see a lot of black folks coming out talking about Bitcoin. There's other factors too. If you look at the early adopters and the early miners and your typical Bitcoin meetup, you rarely see any black folks. There are people, okay, there are people who are black that do go to these meetups and everything, but the users, black folks who use Bitcoin on a regular daily basis, don't go to these meetups. All right, they're busy doing other things, and they're just using Bitcoin right now because it's a wonderful payment method. It's easier to use than Western Union or MoneyGram, and it's a way for them to very conveniently send payment or receive a payment. And it's done in a way where they don't have to reveal too much of their identity, because again, black folks who use Bitcoin have a heavy distrust of any corporation, any state, and I think that's why it's being used, because it's not a company per se. It's just a thing you buy and you send. So no one's tracking you. And black folks have their hair, the back of their hair stand up when they feel like a company is tracking them. I mean, they hate that, because if you just look at history, they don't like to be tracked. All right, they don't like that sense of being followed or surveillanced or hunted, because at some point in history they were, literally, right? So there's a very long history of distrust. But I can tell you, black folks use Bitcoin. They just don't talk about it. They don't put themselves out there like that. And that's probably why you don't see, what this gentleman was talking about. He doesn't see a black person representing someone like him in the Bitcoin space. But on the other hand, it's like, if black folks are waiting for the other black person to represent them, you're going to be waiting a long time. Matter of fact, I know the perfect person to represent you, or any person. All right. If you just go and look in the mirror, that's the person right there who's perfect to represent, the black community. Just look in the mirror. If you are black and look in the mirror, there's your candidate. That's my opinion anyway. Don't wait for somebody else. If you don't see anybody, then represent. That's what I have to say. And then this brings me back to my well, I'm just going to go back to this here now. Okay. So this brings me to my prediction for 2017, that or beyond, I guess, 2017 and beyond. You're going to see a lot more, I guess, at least in America, more minority groups, especially at least some black folks out there who are going to be represented in the Bitcoin space. And they're not going to necessarily go to conferences and start speaking and all this other nonsense. What's going to happen is you're going to see business leaders, community leaders in black communities start to embrace the use of Bitcoin, and they're going to start coming out. They're going to come out, and it's going to be known that these people use Bitcoin, and they don't have to be afraid, because the police of the state, these are people that are going to improve the community, and it's going to be done on a local level. So you won't hear about it on the news, but I predict that in 2017 you'll see a lot of that out in the streets. Right? You're going to see that out in the streets. Black folks are going to be using Bitcoin, and from that, leaders will start springing up, and then eventually you'll have some representation. The black people will have representation in the Bitcoin space, and you're going to see a lot of that. So anyway, that's my prediction for 2017 and beyond. So let's go back to my little digital artwork here, and so it's the 8th year. 8 years Bitcoin has been in creation, since creation, I guess. Hence the Genesis block, and that day is today. That is also the day that I start my year. It's on the 3rd, not on the 1st. My calendar year starts on January 3rd every year. That's when I acknowledge the first day of the year. And so if you look on top, that is the ID transaction ID. On the left here that was the block reward. So if you put that in today's price, that's over $50,000. in Bitcoin. And on the bottom here, that is the address key, and on the right, that is the date, January 3rd, 2009. And of course, you know that's not the typical Bitcoin symbol. That it is an 8-ball. It looks like an 8-ball. Ironically, you could probably with your Bitcoin buy an 8-ball. Anyways, so I like to speculate basically how Satoshi like would have done this, and if you think about it, I think it was, I don't know if it was December, but I think December. Maybe y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but Satoshi put out the white paper. I think around December, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, someone can correct me, but it was obviously before January 2009. And so I'm thinking, you know, I did my profile on Satoshi. I believe it's a white male, probably in his 40s now, since it's been 8 years. But at the time, 30 to 40 years old, college educated, into cryptography, perhaps a mathematician, computer science, background in finance, and comes from a British Empire. Okay. So that was my profile, and I'm thinking, like, you know, why January 3rd? Why that particular day? So here's my speculation on why Satoshi Nakamoto started January 3rd. So he puts out the white paper in January. And I'm sorry. He puts out the white paper around December, if I'm correct. And it gets circulated. People talk about it. He's kind of excited. You know, he's on these forums. By the way, I've never gone on to these forums or read any of the emails or anything. I have tried to read the white paper. The only thing I understand is the first paragraph and the last paragraph. But my speculation is, okay, so he's kind of got other people excited. They're reading this paper, you know, they're asking him questions, this and that, you know, how do we do it and everything. But of course, no one really starts mining. So you have to be foolish enough to believe in the impossible. You have to be foolish enough to do the impossible. You have to be the lone nut who starts all by himself and started mining Bitcoin. But why the 3rd? Well, I think, you know, I do think Satoshi Nakamoto comes from a first world country where they celebrate the holidays. You know, around December, Thanksgiving, you know, kind of Christmas holiday time frame. Definitely celebrates that holiday time frame, and New Year's. Okay, and so basically, if you all did what I think you all did, was celebrate New Year's Eve. Took some time off, you know, was a little hungover. You know, you partied like it was 1999, and probably Satoshi did party like it was 1999 because, you know, most likely he was maybe in high school in 1999, maybe college, who knows. But Satoshi Nakamoto partied on New Year's Eve like it was 1999, and took a little rest. Right, partied New Year's Eve into all the way into the first of the day of the new year. The second day took a rest because basically he was hungover. And then on the 3rd day, he woke up and he said, "Oh yeah, I gotta let me start this. Let me start the blockchain. Let me start mining on my computer." And that's basically how it was done. So that's my speculation on how he came about this particular day to start mining Bitcoin. Celebrated the new year, partied like it was 1999, probably maybe even with an 8 ball. Who knows? He definitely had party, celebrated all the way into the first. The second day, took a rest, and on the third day, started mining. So, anyways, I hope you all enjoyed this episode. Feel free to like, dislike, leave a comment. Also do a video response. Until next time, stay tuned.